Chapter 4 would likely set the scene for what was to come as far as the plot is concerned and how the story will work. The year is 984-05. They had dealt with the distortion case at Yunbong's. 2 months have passed, and yet they've made surprisingly little progress. They were still in the nest of District 11. And that's even considering that some of that time was dedicated to Faust maintaining Mephistopheles. As they were traveling, Yisang was heard and spoke of them being neither high flyers nor greedy vultures. They were merely children who loved technology, asking someone, no one that we've encountered previously, if they remembered the day when they first felt that they were breathing. Back then, that breath alone would suffice, or perhaps it was the air that was exceptionally clear that day. Yes, that was likely a past the past before Yisang was recruited by Limbus Company. Anyway, we then switched to a ruined urban landscape that was in the nest of District 11. A view obscured by smoke and dust. Fires burning randomly. There was terrified screams, hopeless cries, pained moans, and the sounds of hard objects breaking, creating a cacophony. Sounds like a call center in the middle of the week. Then Yisang told Dante that it was time to turn the clock. Yisang was the only conscious sinner at that time. He was mustering up his remaining strength to speak. The others were on the floor, among the dismembered corpses like powerless puppets. These fatal injuries were caused by an abnormality. Yet they were in the middle of a nest. The last place you'd expect this image of pure chaos to occur, as the abnormalities were supposed to be confined within the branch facilities, or even dungeons. As Dante wondered this, the abnormality pierced Yisang's abdomen. Dante couldn't share that question with anyone by that point. And then we shift back to the inside of Mephistopheles, and this was revealed to be some kind of precognitive vision that Dante had developed the ability to receive, as this had clearly not happened yet. Yes. Dante was back in Mephistopheles observing the damned dozen talking. Honglu was asking where they're going this time. They were getting used to this work, like this was a road trip, far less hesitant to ask where the they were going. Faust she said wrong question. The mission begins with a person rather than a place. And this caught Yisang's attention. Faust spoke of a client. Ishmael complained that they're taking outside requests like their mobile fix office. Don Quixote, on the other hand, was joyful at the news that Nephi has been frequented by requests. This was good to hear from her, as it might take little time to become a renowned fixer. Virgilius told them to be quiet. He'll be answering questions, reminding them that the golden balls are a relatively recent discovery. J Corp and D Corp lacked interest when they visited their districts, which is why the branch facilities there were populated by the desperate in the backstreets or syndicate thugs. However, there are wings that saw the value of them early, K-Corp being one of them. They're in their territory currently. Gregor was confused. Didn't they already get the golden bar in K-Corp's nest? Virgilius didn't say that only one bar may exist in a district. The distribution of the branch facilities of the Botany Corporation was more complicated than you'd expect. They can be found anywhere, spread quite literally like tree branches. Sinclair remembered that one of them was connected to his family's estate's basement. And there are no clear definitions about who owns the bars, which is why they use the unwritten rule, finders keepers. Rodia understood that, as that's how it usually went with slumbering treasures. Gregor asked if they've accepted the request to earn ownership of the golden bar. Virgilius told them that they made the offer first, and since the golden bar is on the line, they have, and Ishmael completed that sentence, no choice. Thus, and he found this slightly amusing, he didn't know how many times that he had to remind them of this. Do not do anything to the client off. Well, if they want to do that, all they need to do is to duct tape Heathcliff's mouth, as he's bound to do something like that. Then Dante wanted to ask something, and Virgilius told them to keep their mouths shut until they're there. All as usual. Faust brought Dante to Virgilius's attention. Dante having something to say, they thanked her for this. Virgilius apologized for this, as it's quite cumbersome to grow used to the concept of ticking of a clock being something to respond to. Dante asked what were the golden bars used for. They were given a vague order to collect them and nothing about what the company plans to do with them. Faust summed it up with they were asking about the purpose of golden bars, Virgilius noting that they were ruminating on subjects and curious about the company's plans, so he provided a kind explanation. The golden bars are branches, stems growing from the trunk of a tree. These ones have a golden glow. Only Don Quixote was in awe at this. The passion towards this was clear, painting Dante as ignorant, who doesn't even know what a branch is. Rodia's reaction roughly translated to, "You expected a real answer? If you want that, you're better off asking Bongi." Then Charon alerted Virgilius to the road being blocked, asking if they should go around it. Virgilius wasn't speaking about this, clearly in thoughts. Ishmael asking if the road was blocked, and that was not something to expect in the middle of K-Corp's nest. Then she was interrupted by a dull thud striking the window. According to Rodia, something was flung at the bus and blinked off, asking if it was a person. Missant saw a male in his early 40s with a serious injury in his occipital region. Yes, occipital region, or in simple terms, a middle-aged man was killed by a strike to the back of the head, and he was dead before the impact on Mephistopheles. Virgilius noted that this wasn't an average scuffle. He saw that a pit stop was needed, telling them that they need to deal with it, and if it's a problem they can handle, deal with that, and then come back when they're done. And Roger asking, what about if it isn't? Virgilius told them that Dante will need to turn the clock back until it's dealt with. Dante understood this to be an elegant way to tell them to go die 1,000 deaths. Yeah. Clearly, Virgilius doesn't care that much about Dante's suffering. as how do we know that won't make him snap? Well, assuming that Dante is male. We don't actually know right now, and the pronouns, well, it doesn't make it clear at this point. Anyway, Roger then said, "Off the bus," much to Virgilius's annoyance. Roger was messing with him, as he was going to say the same thing anyway. She saved him the trouble. Honglu was eager to do so, asking what adventures awaited them this time. Well, probably one with about as much untold agony as a night with Pinhead and his Cenobites. Outside the bus, Faust briefed the sinners, telling them that they are in the middle of the nest, the last place that should have unexpected trouble. Honglu asked if this was a precious commotion. Everyone but him was tensing up, as what was going on was more serious than he was making it out to be. Then Dante noticed something. Someone was running towards them, away from something, bumping into them and falling to the ground. She told them not to go that way. Then Don Quixote told her not to worry, as they are there to save innocent lives such as hers, for they are... Then Ishmael corrected her by saying that they aren't heroes, so don't say anything unnecessary. Yeah. Have you forgotten how Virgilius reacted to you making things worse with your heroics? Heathcliff basically told her, the civilian, to get out of the way, as if she was stopping them for no reason. She'll be on the receiving end of a very large baseball bat. The person that bumped into them was asking herself which was the bigger threat, what she was running away from and what she ran to. She then told them that there's something ahead that shouldn't be real. She'd never seen anything like it. Everyone was screaming and running, then people rolling on the floor, set on fire. Yeah, I don't think that stop, drop and roll will help much against what she's implying. Missot asked if this entity had a form that couldn't be confused for human. The civilian agreed. Ishmael noted that if it wasn't a person... They decided to let the civilian go wherever she wanted to go, and they went in the opposite direction that she went, towards the disturbance, and what they found... a red-hot bull with a deformed man as a tongue. It was what was destroying those unfortunate enough to encounter it. Sinclair wanted to know what was going on there. Heathcliff asked if it was a distortion, like with Yinbong's. Dante corrected him. This was clearly an abnormality. Faust confirmed this, and also that Dante can sense the difference between abnormality and distortion. Dante then asked why an abnormality was in the middle of a nest. Faust noted that it's a phenomenon that she's familiar with. Most branch facilities were shut down as soon as the wing dissolved. Dante remembered the site burial that Yuri mentioned. Even if an abnormality did break out, a report would have been made informing them before that mission. The LCC wouldn't have missed it if something like this happened sooner. Sinclair asked if it was the security staff that gets sent by K-Corps. Ishmael didn't think that they'd last long against this. They wouldn't be able to suppress the abnormality. They would just get completely wrecked. Gregor was reminded of their battle against Iori. Well, specifically her minions in District 4. Roger complained that first Yunbong's owner losing it and now this. She was getting sick of this nest's way of welcoming them. Heathcliff then exclaimed at something. The abnormality threw some debris at them, narrowly grazing them as if they were in a bullet hell game. Asking what they're doing. They need to do more than watch from there, otherwise it'll crush them to a pulp. Otis saw this as mistaken of him, asking if that insane brat's ramblings had finally managed to brainwash him. Yep, she was speaking of Don Quixote. And she's not wrong, as she's the one that's outside reality, something that Don Quixote is ignorant of. She reminded them that Virgilius instructed them to return once the commotion was dealt with. He did not order them to deal with it themselves. Heathcliff asked what was there to be obtuse about. He was annoyed by the fact that his head was almost blown off. It won't stop there if it keeps this up. He wants to beat it down. Would she rather find a seat and eat some chicken? Otis didn't see it as a productive use of their time on fights unrelated to their missions. As while they keep coming back to life, it does not reverse psychological damage. Experiencing pain might make them more likely to avoid it, or it might desensitize them to it. Miss Salt was silent during this. Sinclair could not stay silent, as people were dying as they speak, and Otis was unconcerned. As the K-Corp security, they would be able to suppress it, even though it would take longer and cost many lives. Then she had a dig at Sinclair, not expecting a whiny amateur who'd cry out for his parents whenever he died to willingly suggest self-sacrifice, asking if death is such a triviality to him. Otis, you can talk. You need to recall what you said. Death is certainly a triviality to you when it's other people. And be thankful that he resisted the urge to shove his halberd down your throat for that remark. You've seen what he's like when he's pushed too far, and that final that statement you made, that's bad taste. Let's hope this is remembered when the time comes for you to air your dirty laundry. Miss Salt was logical about this, where if they must make the best decision between them, it's right to listen to her. Dante understood that they're neither fixers nor are they heroes. Turning back the clock hurts them when they do this. The pain was something that they could never get used to, and yet Dante told them that they should suppress it, not wanting to logically explain this, just believing that they should. While Captain Suckup were silent at this, Heathcliff was all for this, as he'd have crushed their head if they'd said otherwise. Miss Salt abided by this decision. Gregor was sure that they made the right call. Sinclair thanked them for making that decision. Ryoshu thought that they worried too much about this. Otis saw that this decision was made by them, while the others prepared for battle. Faust gave Dante a peculiar stare. Dante asked if she thought that their judgment was inefficient. She thought that it would be interesting to see how they'd react once they reclaimed their memory. This held them in place briefly. But they decided to deal with the questions ahead of them before anything else. They asked if Faust was okay with being treated like this, considering her talent. She could have experienced a luxurious life with her abilities. She doesn't mind, seeing talent as a word that she felt was incorrect to describe her. Many possess talent. But she doesn't want to be, included in that many. She saw Yisang as talented. She's a genius. Yisang stopped walking and turned around to face Dante, his eyes staring into the emptiness behind them. He denied that he's such an individual. He long stopped fluttering his wings, seeing it as no use to discuss his talent. This silenced Dante, who felt that the more time spent with the damned dozen, the greater the distance between them, not less. Then Ryosho was annoyed by some drones, giving her an overwhelming urge to SID, or shut it down. Yisang recognized them as such, Ishmael seeing them as combat drones that K-Corp sent to help them. They're above average in terms of technology. Faust saw them as not designed primarily for combat, noting the camera at the center of each. Ishmael saw it as making sense as they want to get a close look at the mess happening in a well-off nest. Don Quixote was excited to be on the news. Sinclair saw something was off as they were only filming corpses and dying people. Gregor saw it as provocative stuff, drawing more attention. Roger agreeing, saying, "Look at this terrible incident, see how morbid it is." And just as Sinclair was about to protest, something flew at him. Roger trying to warn him. A wounded Sinclair found this weird, asking why the camera was watching him. Ryosho didn't appreciate this soulless audience. Misalt seeing a considerable number of them and these drones, they were deliberately preventing them from entering the area where the abnormality was. Gregor didn't know why they were getting in the way, as they were there to help. Why would they prevent them from getting in? He realized why, as they were lining up to form a wall. The drone said, "Greetings, citizens. Please keep 10 meters of distance for your own safety. K-Corp staff have been established. Your safety is assured. Please keep 10 meters of distance." And Heathcliff basically said, "Your staff are being slaughtered. Are your cameras faulty?" The drones repeated their message, and Ishmael questioned whether 10 meters will make a difference in that mess. Gregor noting that it won't help them, asking if they were malfunctioning or badly damaged. I'm thinking neither. But he did recognize that they needed to fight their way through them to get to the abnormality. After they smashed all the drones that was in the way, Roger worried that K-Corp will make them pay for damages. Faust will try to report it as an act of self-defense. Roger was assured by this, telling Val that she rocks. Faust telling her that she's late to realize this. Ishmael told them that she felt strange about this abnormality. It didn't feel quite like the others that they fought. Gregor didn't see much experience in that department. The crowd around them was shouting and yelling. Rodia wanted to know how these abnormalities showed up in the middle of the nest, and how did they get more horrifying. Dante recognized it from the mirror dungeon. Although they didn't fight them there, wanting to know what the case is with the non-violent abnormalities within the mirror dungeons. Faust explains why this is the case. An in-universe explanation, as these are glimpses into the abnormalities' mental spaces and habitats viewed through cracks in the mirrored world. Yisang saw it as a chasm, incredibly narrow and unstable, and Faust saw this as only allowing for limited interaction. Heathcliff was annoyed by this, asking why they're so tough. They were as nasty as what they faced on the refraction line. A reference to them being more durable there than outside it. Misalt agreed with this. Sinclair then pointed out the sickening fluid dripping from them, which was why this one was different from other abnormalities encountered. a mysterious blue liquid, Faust advising not to come into contact with it, Roger understanding not to even get smudged with it. Heathcliff was angered by this, asking if they ate bad food on the floor. It's like they had rabies. Then Sinclair warned Heathcliff of something from above. Too late, as he was knocked on the ground. Well, to the ground, to be more precise. Ishmael implying that he's dead, and that Dante has their work cut out for them. Otis reminding them that she gave them her exposition, telling everyone to prepare for battle. Dante figuring that it would come to this. They've come too far to be afraid of bringing them back to life, telling them to beat him and head back. They then fought the Brazen Bull, a burning abnormality that is loosely based on a cruel torture/execution device of the same name. Also known as the Bronze Bull, it was created in Sicily as a means of executing criminals. The condemned were roasted to death inside it, and their screams of agony converted into a sound of a bull, where it was said to have been used in the persecution of early Christians during the Roman era, although it predated that era. As for the abnormality, it primarily burns those that encounter it, although it can also attack the SP of its enemies through the infliction of the sinking status. They were able to suppress the Brazen Bull, and those that were killed, at least among the damned dozen, were brought back by Dante. And as the prolonged cycles of pain came to an end, Faust told them that it was successfully suppressed. They can return to the bus now. Dante nodded at this, even though she neglected to mention that the success accompanied many deaths and revivals, which, thanks to his empathic time inversion power, made it a time of perpetual agony for them. They got back on the bus. Yes, they were back on the bus and they had questions that needed answers. Virgilius noted that they came back later than expected. He was about to take a nap, something that it's been a while since he's done. Dante explained what happened to Virgilius, with Faust translating, of course. They expected him to coldly tell them to do their job as the middle manager and follow whatever orders they were given. But the answer surprised them, as that was what wasn't the case. He acknowledged that the existence of the abnormalities wasn't entirely known to the public, and they don't possess all the details on them, either. Dante didn't think that he'd admit it right away. Thankfully, Faust didn't translate that part. He advised that they leave Faust and other departments to uncover all the details. Faust understood, although Dante asked, when did she have time to do research in that job? Mysteries unsolved, but if Faust accepted that so readily, she clearly had a way. Otis then asked Don Quixote why she had her shoulders hunched over like that. She's short enough as she is. That shrunken posture makes her practically imperceptible. Apparently, she hoped to meet Siegfried again, and Gregor didn't know who she was talking about. Ishmael reminded him of the one that took photos of himself while cutting them down with one hand at the checkpoints. Gregor then remembered him as Zach Fritter. Ishmael was breathing through her nose, implying some deep grudges based on that occurrence. She was eager to show him her valiant acts of rescuing civilians, having vowed to meet him as a fixer of notable cause. Gregor seeing reunions as more touching when it's a long time. Or rather, if it's a long time. telling her to try thinking that it's a good thing that he didn't show up that day. Although Virgilius, the Seven Association affiliate that he is, noticed that it was strange. Siegfried was not one to miss spectacles with that many spectators around. Honglu was excited and asked if he was a kind of celebrity. Virgilius confirmed that, as he had a flair for showmanship. Jacob usually takes advantage of that by sending him. But if he hasn't shown up to draw the public's full attention... Dante completed that sentence by saying that this wasn't something that they want people to notice. I can see how it would have gone had they said Siegfried there. "Foul beast, I have come to smite thee today. You shall face the might of Siegfried, the star fixer of Jacob. Have at thee! Show me what you are capable of!" Yeah, there's so much ham in that, he'd be unsuitable for vegetarians, vegans, and those who are kosher. Don Quixote saw this as slander against him, quoting page 42, fifth row of his autobiography. "A hero must keep smiling until his last," he wrote, "that he shall be there to aid the weak no matter where or when." Don Quixote, even if that was completely true, he can't be everywhere at once. Each district is the size of a city as we would consider it. Virgilius found that amusing, telling her to hold onto that belief of hers dearly. It'll be something for her to cling to when she faces the extreme in the future. As these conversations reached the end, the bus lazily pulled to a stop. Charon is improving. They arrived in front of a building so tall it would take a while to count the floors. A few shrank down as if intimidated. Sinclair, Heathcliff, and Ishmael being three of them that Dante could identify. Others looked around with curious eyes or walked and carried themselves as if they knew they deserved royal treatment, Honglu being one of them, believing that they've earned some renown, as they were invited to places regular people would live. Heathcliff made one thing clear. If this request and the reward sucked like last time, he's out of there. Hard to know what he's more irritated by, Honglu or memories of what happened last time. Samjo acknowledged that they were a little late as expected. Dante was confused by this statement, and Otis recognized him. Then Samjo spouted out some lip service, saying that it's a pleasure to meet them again, that it was his heartfelt sentiments and not a formality. This didn't inspire a lot of confidence in Heathcliff, saying that he was out. Dante asked him to, at least hear what he has to say. Heathcliff asked him how it felt to have nightmares about doing the tango with raw chickens. According to Samjo, the last request was a test to measure their competence, and they passed with flying colours. Annoyed by this, Heathcliff asked who he was to test and rate them. Samjo then was about to say why that was, but a man said that it was at the discretion of his secretary, asking if they were from Limbus Company, introducing himself as Dong Rang. He heard much about them from Samjo. He was almost a fan. Exciting Don Quixote, asking if they've earned his adoration. Roger saw it as flattery. Dong Rang admitted that it wasn't his idea, the test, as they weren't lab hens. Interesting choice of words, as they deserve better than involuntary tests. Samjo admitted that it was his idea, as Limbus Company was a little-known firm that is unclear if it was newly established. They couldn't entrust the request to an unknown organization based on Dongrang's word alone. Ishmael then said that means that they're requesting them. She seems proud of this. When she asked for confirmation, Dongrang provided it. They all are, and he was silent for a short time, and then he decided to show them his lab. There were many things to see. Fun things. Dante saw this changing of subject shamelessly, as only going to bother them even more. I mean, what do you expect from the head of the Development of Food Resource Development? A straight answer? Samjo asked Dongrang if he's really going to take them there. He didn't see why not, as they passed this test, and if they've got the skills to take down that abnormality... Don Quixote was excited that he's heard of her heroic deeds. They will make themselves known to the masses in no time. Yes, no time at all. Dongrang saw it as a fun way of putting it. Then he wanted to speak to Dante, identifying them as the manager. Faust tried to say something to Dongrang, but he and Samjo, they pulled them away at the time she stepped forward. Or rather, by the time he stepped forward. Well, she stepped forward. Yes, they pulled them away by the time she stepped forward. Yes, English, not my best subject. And I am English. Sad, isn't it? Dante was nervous at this, but they didn't mind. But Samjo and Dongrang can't hear them anyway. Dongrang was apparently too embarrassed to bring it up in front of the whole group. It turns out that one of them was an old friend of his. Well, it's certainly not Gregor Rodiel Sinclair, as their stories have been covered. Dante wanted to know who this was. Dongrang said that he wouldn't give him a nod either, possibly due to a similar embarrassment. It was apparently a struggle to hide how disheartened he was. Yes, Dongrang specifically said he, so it's either Yisang, Missel, Honglu, or Heathcliff. It's good of him to narrow it down for us, even though there's a strong suspicion of who that was, based on their background. Dante suspected that they might not have been as close as he thought, then asking if he can hear their voice. Samjo reminding Dongrang that Dante can't communicate normally. Yeah, you'd be better off trying to understand R2-D2, as at least there's more than one way to translate the bleeps and sounds like that intelligent dustbin makes. Apparently it's why Dongrang is speaking to them, as it's like he's back to being a child, muttering his woes to a wind-up toy. Dante realizing that this was all a monologue, and was angered by this, asking, what were those two even doing? Apparently it's because of the one in that group that he sent that request. He trusts a familiar person more than a stranger. Samjo then remembered why he shouldn't let his guard down for even a second. He's too easily influenced by human emotion. Dongrang asked Dante to use their tact and consideration, pretend that they know nothing about the relationship between him and Dongrang. The problem is that, Dante doesn't even know who this friend is. They shook their head. The conversation that never got through ended as abruptly as it began, understanding that this was a notice, not a favour. Then they moved to what Samjo called the laboratory aisle, where researchers were observed, doing all kinds of tasks. He added that ordinary visitors would not be permitted to go any further, but he can show them the interior, as they've been invited by Dongrang. Sinclair was impressed by this. he hoped to work at a company as big as that. Well, it was certainly a possibility considering your background, although I'm not sure if they would have accepted prosthetic users. Roger basically said, "What's stopping you from doing that now?" Ishmael then pointed out to Rodion that not everyone can join that kind of company. They only accept the very best of the elites. I suspect that even our corp, they screen potential templates for each team in each pack carefully. They wouldn't just pick anyone from the back streets. Although when they do recruit from there, it would make sense to recruit the teams from there and the commanders and ravens from the nests, as the back streets are a perfect breeding ground for fighters, as it's social Darwinism at its worst there. As for the nests, they require a discipline to be effective. In the case of K-Corp, Faust and Yisang would have been perfect candidates for that wing. Dante asked why did they choose Limbus Company out of all the options they had. There must have been better places to shoot for. Well, there are certainly a few worse places. Some of the identities are proof of that. Faust simply stated that she was Faust. Yeah, not that informative. And Dante felt a certain energy from this confidently clarifying tone that discouraged further questioning. And then, when they asked Yisang, who asked why did they join the company that they worked for, Dante answered that it wasn't because they had a choice in the matter. Yisang told them that this answered their question. The same could be said for, well, almost all of the damn dozen. Dante then found out that Ishmael wasn't exaggerating about the qualifications that it took to join K-Corp, or indeed any other wing. The laboratory was dominated by a stillness that could only be achieved with everyone in total focus. As for Rodia, her focus was on the fridge full of snacks, and she wanted to take some with her. This made them feel awkward, although Dongrang told her to take as many as she wanted, even telling Samjo to pack some snacks from the break room into small bundles to give them to them later. Clearly he wanted to add to the incentives to help him. Samjo understood, considering it pointless to argue about this. Rodia seeing this as awesome, asking if they should quit their job and join K-Corp. Ishmael warning her that everyone can hear her. Faust reminding her of her work contract, but it turns out that Rodia was taking the Dongrang then moved on to the request. A female researcher was annoyed by Dongrang bringing outsiders into the building, asking if he's a field trip guide. He introduced her as Shirin, the manager of the department next to his, and a colleague who joined K-Corp at the same time as him. Apparently she's visiting him to hurl harmful words, which takes up much of her daily routine. She's there to point out the massive drain on their company's welfare budget. That is his team. Wait, there's a welfare budget? I mean, does she know how low the life expectancy of a winged feather is? Assuming that they don't get fired beforehand. Dongrang told her that he'll tell her how he spent the welfare budget with, well, when the Department of the Year trophy is awarded, asking Samjo for confirmation. Samjo told them that it would take a full day to list the benefits that the department chosen as the best receives. Shirin, annoyed by those two snobs, likely implying that she was from the backstreets, someone that owed her position to merit. Gregor seeing that they're rivals, seeing excellence followed by envy, even there. Dong Rang, seeing envy as fueling advancement. It's only right to show generosity for those following behind, asking Samjo if they should give some pies that they bought from that store to her department. Okay, now he's taking the isn't he? And not doing that well hiding it. Apparently, Samjo was preparing to do so, specifically the pepper, chili, lettuce, and curry flavoured ones. Sounds more high-end than ham ham pang pang, doesn't it? Roger thinking that her stomach sees that as tasty. Then Dong Rang got back to the main topic. He heard rumours that a newly formed, at least approximately 4 months having passed, company was collecting organic objects called golden bars, found exclusively inside the closed-down branch facilities of Lobotomy Corporation. Wiltis wanting to know how he learned of their existence. It was a recent discovery as they used a branch facility near this research facility as a lab until a few months ago. So around 16 months ago at the earliest, possibly longer. We don't know exactly how much time has passed between the start of Library of Rowena and Leviathan. Heathcliff was puzzled as to why they set up a lab in such a horrible place. Sinclair thought that they were buried underground. Gregor understanding the rare resources and documents there that could be used, which would be worth the excavation equipment. I mean, Encrop certainly considered it worth digging a tunnel down to the branch facility under coal. First asking if the scope of their research included abnormalities. Dong Rang confirmed this. No researcher would overlook such intriguing subjects. Heathcliff seeing this as stupid. If they're interested in this, then he wanted to know something else. Then Samjo was talking about rubbish and tossing a rock at one of the head chickens that has been taken over the security operative. Yes, that's what Heathcliff mentioned. And Samjo was understandably nervous at this. Faust was surprised by Heathcliff's unexpected fits of insight. Well, even a broken clock is right at least once a day. As Samjo led them into dealing with the distortion in a coincidental encounter that involved throwing a stone to attract a head chicken's attention. Also that he could gather data for his research on abnormalities. Dong Rang admitted that Samjo is a actor. He's too upright for that. They also couldn't tell the difference between a distortion and an abnormality. Well, the main difference is that a distortion, when killed, will stay dead. Remembering that a person distorts when the mind crumbles to figurative pieces, as Faust would put it, asking if they restored his crumbled mind back to health. Faust corrected him, stating that there was no way to piece together someone else's broken mind. All they did was show him the way. It was up to him to decide whether to stay as he was or go that way. Dong Rang apparently impressed. If he was a bit younger, he would have jumped and hopped trying to high-five her. Faust told him that he was unwelcome to try. By her standards, this was expressing strong annoyance. Samjo informing Dong Rang that he was being sidetracked again. Then he found something one day. They indulged in the research in that branch facility, and armed terrorists attacked that place. It was all too sudden. A bomb was set before his eyes, seeing it as quite the spectacle, starting and ending in a split second. Ortiz wanted to know where the terrorists were, understanding who the enemy was now. Samjo telling her that the members have almost nothing in common, their motive was unknown. They only showed up recently, and they've taken over the branch facility. All this understanding that it was when the lab was moved. Yi Sang wanted to know how severe the damage was, while Dong Rang was more focused on unoccupied seats than on Yi Sang. He then pointed them out, the previous occupants. They were the ones that were killed by that bomb set by the terrorists. Snacks and flowers were placed on cushions as a way to mourn the dead. Clearly, to do otherwise would be considered bad taste. They were only able to recover a finger from one of them. They kept it in storage in a display on the second floor. A solemn silence filled the office upon finding this out. Dong Rang continued as he brushed the empty desk with his hand, noting that there was so much that they had to leave behind. Gregor he understood that somewhat. He left behind the plaque modelled after his own face, a favourite souvenir of his, Gregor not being able to tell how much was a joke and how much was serious. Woods then asked about the seat, referring to the whiter desk that's completely empty. Dong Rang told her that it was reserved, waiting for a new employee to take that seat. Ishmael asking if there's an application guideline for the position, asking to see it. Seriously, Ishmael? After what you said to Rodia earlier? Samjo then expressed his annoyance once more, Dong Rang taking the hint and deciding to get to the point. Samjo was blunt with what was next and suggested an accord that would benefit both parties. Limbus Company helps them to retake the laboratory, they get the golden bar. Faust then asking if it's a fixed contract or a post-fulfillment review contract. Will it be represented by delegate bodies or co-executive members? Yeah, I know. Can't escape from red tape or legalese, even in that world. He made it clear that it was an immediate delegate body represented contract, with no warranty liability. A contractual signing overseen by an observer from a Grade 1 contract office will take place following due process. So they'll be needing an Orifi Association-affiliated office. Dante not understanding what's going on or why it has to be so complicated. Ishmael explaining that they couldn't get the golden bar right away in District 10, despite winning that card game, because they didn't have anyone overseeing the deal. Gregor remembering Ayuda from the Merry Archies, who started a fight even after Roger won that game. Sink there corrected him by saying Aida from the Los Mariachis. Ishmael confirming this, as instead of playing the role of observer, she left them with no choice but to take it by force. Which is why it's safer to use the service of those glorified lawyers to stand as an observer, or to notarize the contracts, even if it can be costly. Yeah, they're bloodsuckers that aren't blood fiends. It's what Faust considered most carefully. Dante understanding that this was common knowledge to most city folks. Evidently not to the black stain, as he thought that his participation in the smoke war would guarantee him a place in the nest. He should have had an Orifi affiliate read the fine print before he accepted the deal. Either that or, at that time, he couldn't afford that service. Faust noted that it certainly favoured their side, with both her and Samjo saying as long as the goal is achieved, which shocked the others. He told the others that he doesn't get more than half of what Samjo says. So Dongrang just nods like, oh, I see, and move on. Does he have ADHD? Gregor understood him. At least with that, with Yisang and Faust. Ishmael asking if he was supposed to be the last person ignorant of his secretary's words. Honglu understanding that the contract with K-Corp meant that they won't be fighting with their staff while it's in effect, as in those that keep healing their wounds. The others would rather not be reminded of this. Dong Rang understanding that they're familiar with K-Corp's regenerative technology. Roger complaining that they've more than just seen it. Gregor saying that they've had to deal with it over and over. He was sick of the thoughts. Dong Rang offered to show them around his lab. It requires the elevator to get to it. Samjo reminding him that it's off limits for unauthorized personnel. Dong Rang not thinking much of it. Certainly not his funny noise that he made when this was even spoke of. They're hanging out a bit to celebrate the provisional contract being signed. Dante followed him, despite being unsure if this was an appropriate way of celebrating things. Although he followed anyway, or rather they followed, to put it more correctly, due to no one objecting. Now, is it just me, or does Dong Rang reek of functional sociopath? As for the terrorists, that implies that the nests aren't as secure as we're led to believe. As if the rest wasn't enough, such as a wing falling, resulting in the nest becoming as lawless as the backstreets, that's Lobotomy Corporation in District 12, the waxy angel of death that was the crying children devastating the nest of District 22, and recently the brazen bull wreaking havoc within the nest of District 11. While the nest is safer than the backstreets, it's certainly not devoid of danger, and that's not considering the constant fear of eviction from it, should performances not be high enough. Yes, there's quite a bit to go through, and this is just Act 1. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!